Hey there, it's Robert Ohado. Welcome to this very special live stream event on the eclipse that we're going to have tomorrow, which is October 14th. It is the new Moon Solar Eclipse in Libra. So I'm so glad you're here. I've got a lot to cover here. I haven't done an eclipse video in quite some time, and this was kind of last minute thrown together. So I hope you enjoy it. We're going to be covering a lot of deep stuff, actually, believe it or not, in an eclipse. So if you're not familiar with what a new moon solar eclipse app even is, I'm going to tell you in just a minute. You know, this is a real crossroads, this eclipse, and that's why I wanted to take it on and actually get live and do a video on it. It's a crossroads for you personally. It's a crossroads for me personally. It's a crossroads for us collectively. You know, it's truly a crossroads for everybody. And I'm sure you're feeling it. If you have been paying attention emotionally the past week or week and a half and just feeling that kind of funky hum or funky vibe and just this feeling like things are a bit off, then you're in the right place. Also, if you're really struggling right now with all the different really tragic things that are happening in the world right now, you're also in the right place. I'm going to have some things to say later on how to be with a lot of what's happening, how you can be, I think, the most empowered and graceful during these times. And we're going to do that by exploring the human heart and the cosmic heart in this particular social live video, which may be on demand for you by the time that you're actually seeing it. So what this is all about in the end, because this is a new moon that happens to be also an eclipse in Libra, it's all about healing our relationships. So as I go through the themes and get into the actual astrology of it, I'm going to pull up the actual eclipse chart and delineate it for you, which is astrology speak for point out some main things and tell you what it all means as I go, which is the first time I've ever done this actually in a live stream. So I'm super excited about that. And I'll be giving you guidance as I go and showing you where I'm pulling things from in terms of the actual eclipse chart. So stay tuned for all of this. We're going to look at how the solar eclipse is going to shift the energy of the Earth's magnetics and archetypal matrix. We're going to look at how we need to really step into the cosmic heart. What even is the cosmic heart? What is that versus the personal human heart? Why am I trying to pull these things into two places and actually speak of them separately as different forces? Well, they actually are, but we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how to use the energy of this new moon solar eclipse to, in fact, just heal your relationships. And of course, that always means the relationship you have with yourself. And then we're going to look at the astrology of the, as I just said, the solar eclipse chart. And I'm going to offer what I feel it's giving us as a set of celestial instructions as to how we can all now proceed forward personally and collectively in an evolution versus a repeat. And then we're going to look at a little bit how this eclipse, because they always say it's eclipse season, right? Us astrologers say that a lot. Well, that's because eclipses are always paired together. So we do have in 2 weeks a full moon lunar eclipse in Taurus. So I'm going to hint toward that a little bit as well. So I'm so glad you're here. Open your heart, get ready. We've got some serious healing to do in this video. And if you're watching me live in this live stream. Okay, that break was so I could take a drink of watermelon juice because my throat's a little bit hanging on, shall we say. I've been teaching a lot lately, and I'll reference a little bit of that too while we get going here. So what is a solar eclipse anyway? Like, what are these things? And every solar eclipse is also a new moon, by the way. So they're always going to be tied together. When I show you the actual diagram of what creates a solar eclipse, you'll see what I'm talking about in terms of the astronomy. Now, I'm going to offer just a little bit of some energetic archetypal territory in terms of what it is, and then I'm going to show you the astronomy/astrology of it, and we're going to start diving into the themes and weaving our way through. So a solar eclipse, and all eclipses do this to some degree, but a solar eclipse is when the Moon actually gets between the sun and the earth and blocks the actual usual flow of the sun's energy to the earth. And it happens, for a brief moment and in a certain section of the world, because the whole world doesn't experience this visibly. I'm going to show you where you can see it this year or this time. But what it symbolizes and everything in astrology. Oh, by the way, I'm Robert Ohado, intuitive and astrologer, in case you don't know who I am. But what this symbolizes in astrology is an electromagnetic field interruption that creates a reboot of the Earth's archetypal matrix. It gives, which means, because we're all fused into this matrix and its cycles and its archetypal flow and its patterns, right? That Earth is a energetic co-creative matrix, just putting that out there. And we're all connected to it as human beings and co-creating with it our lives. That's kind of what astrology is brilliant at showing us, is what is this matrix? What's it doing? How can we work with it? That's what we're up to here. So it's an interruption of the usual patterns. Every eclipse does this in a different way. So a new moon, solar eclipse, there we are with new moon. It is about some kind of new beginning. But of course, with every new beginning, the other side of that coin is also an ending. So what any eclipse will show, and this one most notably, is where something has to have a moment where, I'm going to use the language we're heading toward anyway, where the soul of who we are as a humanity and who you are and I am as a human being, the soul of it all, can get through to us. And sometimes we need that kind of interruption, that kind of static, we can't just keep going with the usual flow. It's kind of like a Mercury retrograde, but in the course of like the pressured energies of a week. And as we look to what's happening now in life, and I always say, and this is very true, and you will hear this again throughout this hour together, astrology is what we live. So we are now entering into an eclipse of Libra, which is symbolized by the scales of justice and is about relationships and about equality and fairness and the journey through the pattern of Libra of arriving at some sense of shared equal value. And how do we come to karmic balance with life and with ourselves? And we find ourselves this last week, most notably, in the midst of a war beginning within Israel and Gaza. So astrology is what we live. It is absolutely a map of synchronicity. And it shows, if you see it the correct way and use the tool the correct way, correct just meaning in a more intuitive, archetypal, multi-D way, it'll show the potentialities and where we're being guided by life, by Gaia, by our soul contracts to evolve and not repeat. And so here we are, in the midst of that's one very visible event that is connected in synchronicity to this eclipse. But I want you to now also go into your personal self and look at your relationships and consider what kind of dynamics have been funky, pressuring, and just feeling unstable or shaky. I know for sure I've been feeling that. I'm sure you probably have too in some way, or just feeling like, I don't know, I feel vulnerable and like a shoe's going to drop anywhere or something, that kind of like, I don't feel like I'm in and I'm going to switch to this language, my normal patterns, my normal sense of self, my normal sense of mapping my life consciously and unconsciously. And that's absolutely true. An eclipse is coming in, a new moon, lunar or solar eclipse, new moon solar eclipse is coming in to actually kind of shut that down. It's like, when you got some sort of power outage, we're losing the power of the sun. It's, for a minute being interrupted by the moon. So this is about this reboot of your psychic system, your archetypal patterns, but it's all connected to Libra because both the sun and the moon are in Libra. It's a new moon. So I got to show you some graphs and diagrams here because I feel like it's helpful to have some visuals. Let's just look at the actual astronomy of the eclipse and take everything I just said and now start to see it within this diagram. So as we look at this diagram, the anatomy of a solar eclipse, you're going to see there's the sun, there's the moon, and there's the earth. And you can see where there's that interruption. Now, obviously, the sun is so massive that it's not like the moon's blocking out the whole sun for the whole of the earth, right? And yet, relative to where you would see in its totality, the full eclipse happen, you would actually feel that was happening in that zone. And this time, just to quickly reference this, that zone is happening in this regard, and props to Jonathan Coram from NASA for this image. This is happening, you can see that 90%, where there's going to be 90% of the eclipse, which is called the Ring of Fire, by the way, because it doesn't fully eclipse. There's still a ring of fire, even if you're in the place where, let's say in the world, where you could actually see the eclipse as full as possible. This time you would still see a ring of fire. There are some eclipses that go a little bit more than that. So there's a 90% eclipse kind of going through from like the Seattle, Oregon area, all the way down, Washington, Oregon area, all the way down through next to me here in Colorado, where we're going to see 70% of the eclipse to 80% of it. And this is happening tomorrow. Now, the thing to realize is that the eclipse actually happens over a span of time. It's not just like, I'm going to show you an astrology chart that I've erected that's based on 11:55 a.m. where I live. And that's where we'll have the fullest experience of it at that time. But depending on where you are, it'll happen in a different time. So if you're in, Central America and then into Brazil, and if you're actually in the way of it, it's going to be much later and happen. It still happens pretty quickly. It's not like, it's 12 hours and there's an eclipse moving through the whole atmosphere of the earth, the psychic field of the earth. But I love looking at stuff like this to get that visual, because this is where we, developed the astrological model, was from actually looking at these things. And I love astronomy in as much as I love astrology. So get this image now that this is a turning point. There's an interruption through this Ring of Fire eclipse, and it's going to be an energetic that we're all going to be experiencing. I mean, this is the thing about them. And I don't know if you ever, check this out. Next time you start to have a funky week and it's just like, something's off, man. Something's not quite feeling right. Go check out if there's a full moon coming, new moon coming, or an eclipse coming, whether it's new moon or full moon, because that happens to me. And I mean, I'm an astrologer, and I'm like, I feel funky. Something's going on, and then I'll go reference, my astrology, because I don't always look at it all the time. I'm not that kind of astrologer. Actually, I look at the bigger things versus the micro all the time. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. It's a new moon. It's a full moon. It's an eclipse, and it will really impact you. It impacts us all because it's the whole psychic field of the earth that's going through this, but it will very much impact you depending on where it's happening inside your own natal chart. So if you have a natal chart, you could see where this happens to be happening. And the actual degrees of this is 21 degrees Libra. So you look to see where is this 21 degrees Libra event occurring on October 14th, Saturday here in the United States. Obviously, if you're in Australia, you're on Sunday already, and wherever you might be in the world. That's a great way to start to see, okay, this is how it's going to impact me personally and bring an interruption of patterns to some arena of my life. Now, this is Libra. So the interruption will be relational, let's say, in nature. It is about relationships, about your relationship to yourself, your patterns that you relate to others through, and a need to interrupt that. Now, what's the interruption about? It is about this. And this is just one vein of it. I couldn't speak to all of them, but I'm picking a main vein for you to extrapolate and find yourself in. And that is, this is about moving from the human heart to the cosmic heart. So this is that movement of moving from one part of your nature, which I'm going to define and explain, to another. And the journey of making that movement and why we need to make that movement to evolve in our relating instead of repeating. So I'm going to next kind of look into, through the actual eclipse chart, what the astrological coordinates are that are part of the message or pressures here. While there is this, obviously, eclipse happening inside the archetype of Libra, when you see the chart, And actually, I'll show it to you now because I actually have it here, and then I have it on another camera that I'm going to write on. But when you see this chart, you're going to see, and if you can't read astrology symbols, then you're going to need to look at something. I'm just going to put this up, something like this. You can find it probably something like this online. Obviously, my graphic designer made this for me, but this kind of is a legend and decodes all the symbols and what the planets are. Depending on how seasoned and knowledgeable you are in astrology, you might need to reference this to understand what the heck I'm talking about when I talk about this eclipse chart. However, if you don't know astrology and you're like, Robert, I hang out with you because I get great insights. I don't know what all that astrobabble is, but I like it when you explain it, and then boom, my mind is blown and my heart is open. Hang with me, I'm going to get you there. But I'm also going to include a little more astrology here than I usually do because it's something that I've been finding people really are liking. I'm getting messages all the time about how they really like seeing this. And that helps kind of ground for those who are studying astrology, how to really see, like I do, the chart and work with it in a certain way. So, you always learn a lot by watching other people go through the chart. Having said that, this is the new moon solar eclipse in Libra chart as cast for where I live in Aspen, Colorado. And so just know that it's, what we're mostly focusing on here is not the rising sign in the midheaven and all this other stuff. I'm looking at the planetary aspects that are occurring inside of this and connected to this actual eclipse. Now, you can see the sun and moon up on top, and I'm going to actually have a chart shortly that's going to explain this more. But I want you to understand the sun and the moon and Mercury and the south node, because the nodal axis has shifted to Libra Aries, are all connected in what's called the stellium in astrology. It just means they're all by each other. And you can see that up there right at the top of the chart where the Libra sign is, where it kind of looks like scales, as in justice scales, not fish scales, just being clear. And if you look, you'll see that there's red lines that come from all of those planets there, and then they move down toward what is Chiron, Eris, and the North Node in Aries, which is the opposite archetype of Libra. So what I'm after you understanding just at this first foray into the chart is that there's the eclipse specifies its energetics and instruction per the other things happening in the sky at the same time as the eclipse, and most notably what the sun and the moon, which are right on each other together, are then connecting to in what are called aspects, which is another way of me saying it. Let's speak archetype here. It's like the archetypes of the sun and the moon in Libra are having a conversation with, as I just showed you, Chiron in Aries, Eris in Aries, and the North Node in Aries. And it creates an archetypal dynamic that builds in us, builds in the psychic field, and begins to activate, and perhaps one could use the word trigger, certain things into conscious awareness that maybe before were in the shadow, or that just haven't been integrated, or are ready to evolve. And those certain things are patterns. And as we can see in what's happening within Israel, some patterns go back 100 years, 200 years in the collective psyche. So when you work with astrology the way that I do, and the way I think is most useful, is it requires that you see things as interconnected and interrelated in a most holographic way. That's why I branded my astrology holocompass astrology. It's using the holographic sight to locate your own sense of compass, where you are, where your coordinates are in things like an eclipse. So we're going to next move into the chart, and I'm going to then sort of make some connections. And as I do this, if you don't understand the astrology, that's totally fine. I will explain some activated pieces that will make sense to everyone. At least I believe that's true. And to do that, I'm going to go to a second camera here and then use a black or blue marker or pen to kind of start to map out the things I want you to consider. And as I talk about this, I'm going to be pulling out the themes, the elements, and then I'm going to shift out of that into the main theme of the human heart and cosmic heart. You ready? All right, let's do this. So moving to the second camera here, and as I move my chair as well. So what we have here is a new moon solar eclipse in Libra chart. That's what I just showed you on the screen as well, by the way, but this is actually on paper, so I can write on it. And this is where I was talking about having that stellium. This is where you've got, this is Mercury, the moon, and this is the sun. And notice they are exactly on each other. And then they go into an opposition, which is the name of that aspect, all the way to, here's Chiron. This is Chiron, Eris, and the North Node. Let's just talk about that for a minute. So this is going to be something, this eclipse, that causes us to change our thinking, because Mercury is involved in it and how we think, both personally and collectively, about things. And we are, of course, being activated in the pattern of Libra, which is about relationships and fairness and justice, victimization, the victim archetype, and also how do we get to some kind of karmic balance within the lives we live as human beings. Now, there's a conversation, however, going on through this, what is trying to seed a new beginning. And that conversation is occurring with Chiron, which is the wounded healer and shaman, and Eris, which I have a completely different interpretation of this force than I think any other astrologer out there. But what I'm going to just say Eris is to me is the love rebel. And it would take me an entire course to teach you what that exactly means, but I'm going to try to do my best to include the meaning inside of this conversation. And then we've got this karmic path, which the nodes represent, that's open to us right now. And that is coming out of old relationship paradigms, both personally and collectively, into something new where, you know, Aries is, as well, in part, Aries is connected to pioneering. Also, Ares was god of war. And so we've got this sense of fighting the good fight, being a rebel. That's one of the archetypes of Aries. And now you got Chiron, and also connecting in here, which is about how do we arrive at a sense of being able to be a free individual, Aries. Aries is all about individuation, becoming uniquely you. It's the I am pattern, like I have to be me. Who am I? I am. And Chiron is about, you know, so we're in the realm of identity. And identity is a neutral thing, by the way. But anything neutral can have a shadow and light side. And identity can heal you. And identity can wound you. Identity can empower you. Identity can disempower you. Identity can open you up to see clearly your intuitive options and co-creative options in life. And it can do the exact opposite and block and shut you down. So for example, just to riff off that one sec, you know, what if you're in the identity of the victim, which I call, then now you are in the shadow victim archetype. When you make the victim archetype identity versus an experience, we all get victimized. That's an experience of life. It's a pattern of life. That's being human. But then when we double down into being victimized as identity, like I am a victim, that starts to take folks down disempowering and I think karmically dark paths, both for themselves and other people. Based on what we've seen in history, and I'm sure you could think of your own personal life and think of times when you just played the victim or embellished the victim or try to maneuver power through the victim in you and made it identity. And, you know, it doesn't really, it's just not useful for co-creating an empowered life. It's useful for understanding how not to be victimized again and then becoming empowered in ways where that, you know, doesn't happen. But, you know, so I could go on and on about, but that's the power of identity. That's one example. So Chiron in Aries is about identity can wound you and identity can heal you. Chiron represents a dimensional bridge between one dimension of consciousness, empowerment, and co-creation to another. And as part of the bridge, you will have to enter into the vocabulary of both and. I am both wounded by identity and also healed by it. And you have to enter into something very fundamental that's going to be part of our conversation through this whole eclipse, and that is you must enter into paradox. Out of either or into both and means I'm going into paradox. Both can be true. And it doesn't make sense to the human mind that wants things either or because it makes life seem more controllable and it helps us assign value easier or get to what is justice easier. But the co-creative mystical territory if you want to access that level of grace and power, demands a both and bridge to get in there. That's the shamanic bridge. So these forces are having a dialogue with these forces right now, but that's not the only forces that are speaking to each other, because these two in turn are also speaking over here to Pluto and Capricorn, which is squaring, as we say in astrology, both parties. So Pluto and Capricorn, where it's been for quite some time, since about 2007, and it's on its way to Aquarius shortly over the next couple of years, it's sort of saying, hey, yeah, we got to start talking about the shadow side of isms here. Capitalism, nationalism. There's a lot of things that happen in Capricorn that deal with social and societal structure and cultural structures that have a shadow side. And Pluto's always about going into that shadow side to go through a death, rebirth, dark night process to be reborn into more holism, more equality, more living within a real true sense of empowerment. And with Pluto, it's at a psycho-spiritual level. Now, there's another planet here that's in the mix that I'm going to pull in because it's just a very active cycle. I just taught an entire 11-part series on it, and I'm pulling some pieces from that series actually to discuss this eclipse, and that is Saturn in Pisces right here, which is retrograde back to 0 degrees. It will not go out of Pisces back into Aquarius, but it's going to kind of station around here before it goes direct before too long here. And that's also in the conversation in the mix here, as it also then makes an opposition to Venus in Virgo up here. And then Pluto's talking in a sextile to Neptune in Pisces, and Saturn in Pisces is coming up now on where Neptune's been since about all the degrees that Neptune's activated since about 2011. And Neptune is getting ready over the next coming years to make its exit out of Pisces into Aries. So where we're going to go, and I could keep going, obviously, but where I really want to focus is in these places. I want to talk about Saturn in Pisces and Neptune in Pisces right here. And I want to talk about the Sun, Moon in Libra with its opposite to Aries as found in Chiron and Eris. And then I want to layer in the nodal axis. And I just mentioned, kind of Pluto's orientation here as a pressure. And from there, we're going to walk into some themes here. So with the nodal axis in play, and once again, if you just went, come again, what was that? I got you now, just follow the guidance out of the astrological language a little bit here, which will be referenced much less into the actual, let's say, spiritual instruction, or I'm really, in my view, through this eclipse, I'm more bringing my guide forward. And as I bring that part of what I do, using astrology as a tool, but also just an intuitive understanding of the human psyche as a tool, I'm more interested in generating questions for you to ask yourself than telling you answers. I think especially considering the lay of the land here, it's more about the questions we ask and how we locate those answers in this human heart, cosmic heart thing I'm going to talk about. That's my focus. Because what's happening now generally, and just referencing for a second the Israel Gaza war, is people are all up here. And this isn't, in my view, a useful place, certainly for mystical guidance, because the mind cannot come into mystical territory. It just can't enter that. The mind has its place in our co-creative journey of being human. It's part of our human psychology. And it's a wonderful thing in so many regards. But the mind cannot hold mystical truths, the mystical truths of the cosmic heart, in its logical computations. It just can't. And when I get into what that even means, you're going to go, got it. For one, the heart level of you, whether that's personal, human heart, or cosmic heart, is about an emotional, soulful base, depending on where you are in your human or cosmic heart. It's not about the mind. It's about feelings first, meaning later. And to get out of the darker feelings and the discomfort of darker feelings and the things that we inevitably are going to experience as human beings that relate to other human beings. We don't like that discomfort of that kind of dark feeling area. We're like, yeah, I'm good. I don't really want to feel that. So let's get to meaning. And we try to override the natural process of the human heart and what it's trying to get through and trying to metabolize and how it's trying to get us a pathway to the cosmic heart. We override that. And then we end up in what I'm going to say are patterns that keep spinning the same wheel of karma. And that is what is in this eclipse. So the first question, are we at this juncture of our journey in relationships? And you can go holistic with that. Your spouse, partner, your family, your business associates, your business partners, your animals. I don't go wherever, the earth, politics, go wherever we relate to. We're in relationship to everything. So this is a loaded, full, and very rich territory. When I say relationships, I don't just mean one-on-one, but you'll find yourself in these questions where this eclipse is meant to guide you. Maybe it is a one-on-one situation, or it's a few. Maybe it is something about how are we going to be in a world that has these activating wars. Russia, Ukraine, now it's Palestinians, or Hamas more specifically, and Israel. And how are we going to evolve and not repeat? War is nothing new for the planet, right? That's definitely a repeat. What keeps spinning the karmic wheel of war? But that's one level you might relate to. But you also might just be like, hey, you know what's going on? I am on the brink of divorce, or I am on the brink of a business breakup, or I'm on the whatever it may be for you. I want you to use this structure as your guide to locate answers for yourself, but I'm going to guide you to the questions that I would guide you to ask. So now that we're moving out, what's in play here? Bring in the nodal axis again. South node Libra, north node Aries is this question. How do I move in relationships now in ways that are going to honor my value and honor the other person's value in a balance of give and take and reciprocity, just as one pattern in a relationship, but moreover, in a balance of me still being able to be an individual that has needs, that can express those needs, that can say, hey, this is a boundary. I need you to respect it. Hey, this is something I'd like you to consider. Hey, and the thing is, do you have people in your life that actually value you and you being an individual that, yes, does have individual needs and has needs that need to be asserted? That's Aries, voiced. And how are you going to move in the world with a more empowered backbone? And more importantly, perhaps, considering the eclipse at hand here, where do you have to move through some forgiveness territory? Where do you have to move through some spaces in yourself or in your relationships where, I'm only approaching this from the human heart level, Robert, and that only gives me so many options. So I'm already starting to teach you a little here. How do I get to the cosmic heart? How do I get that force involved in my loving, my relating, my boundary setting, my asking people to demonstrate value for me by honoring values or helping me with my needs? So there's a karmic path here, both for you personally and the collective. Relationships go macro and micro, right? So how are countries going to relate to each other? How are different religions going to relate to each other? How are we going to relate to terrorists? How are we going to relate to horrific tragedies and events such as just happened? And how are we going to do that? Because this is a karmic path with the nodes, and not generate the same exact karma again. Is there a way out of the same wheel of karma? Can we evolve versus repeat? These are the questions. And I'm going to have so many more for you. Now, spinning off this, I want to start defining for you what the cosmic heart is and what the human heart is. And where I came up with this and why I think it is one of the central questions in this eclipse. First, I got to take a drink of some watermelon juice because my throat is bringing the dry thunder. I might have to do a lozenge. And I want to take a minute and say hi to everybody. This is a social live, so thank you so much for being here. I might have to go all Ricola up in here. I'm not sure. How's everyone doing? So I can see your comments. We've got YouTube in the house. We got Facebook in the house. So cool. All right, so I'm sorry, I'm gonna have like this lozenge. I'll try to make it as inconspicuous as possible. It's better that than me losing my voice. So I taught this Saturn series, and that's where some of these insights came from. And it ended up being a 20-hour journey. That's how much there is to talk about with this cycle, let me tell you. So by the way, if you're interested in that, it's part of what's called the Cosmic Guidance Package on my website, and you can go check that out. It's right on the homepage, ohado.com. There's a link in the video description. It's only available for like another few days. But if you want to go deeper into any of these themes and also get into what the Saturn and Pisces journey is about, this is the sponsor for this video. Go for it. It's really going to change your life. I mean, whoa, it was pretty incredible to teach. All right. And the feedback's been incredible. Okay. What is the cosmic heart? How is it different from the personal heart? Well, now I've got to bring you into Pisces, the archetype. And there's two archetypes so far in astrology that I have felt inclined and inspired to redefine. One is Aquarius, which I'm not going to get into, but the other also happens to be Pisces. And why would I bring this up as part of one of the main focuses here? I was going to say foci. I don't think that's exactly the right word, but what I think the journey is in our certainly spirituality, as I can tell, and empowerment in this new era of moving further and further into what I would define as one world consciousness, which is just about living life, knowing you are interconnected to a one world Earth with all the humans here, and we all interbe, we all interexist, we all interrelate, and we all need each other somehow. And how can we live in those truths without going to war, without trying to, kill each other or harm each other? These are age-old questions that have not been solved yet by any means. However, we've had some great teachers come along like Buddha and Jesus Christ that I think offered some very powerful perspectives on how we can evolve and not repeat. So I will probably more side with the pattern of Christ consciousness in Christ, because both Buddha and Christ were Piscean teachers, but Christ to me is, in this instance, more of a better reference that illustrates exactly what I'm going to teach you, because I think that's what Christ came to teach, was how do you go from the human heart to the cosmic? His whole journey of the crucifixion brings the teaching through. And so what is the human heart? I want you to think of what it means to be human, and all the beauty that goes with being a human being. And the central part of it for you might just be here. It is certainly the central part that I've seen through my work as an intuitive that I find in people and in myself. When I think of the human journey and what's most beautiful about it, I end up here in the human heart. And the human heart is beautiful, but it's let me say it this way, and I'm going to be very technical, not declarative about what the human heart is. And I want to say this because I've got to establish language to teach through these dynamics technically, these spiritual dynamics technically. So you might have a different definition for cosmic and human heart. That's just fine. I want you to, for now, let that go and let me define the technical territory here for you. You can always go back to your own definitions when we're done. But for us to get to alchemy, we have to be on the same page. And as an intuitive, I am a technician, and I'm also a linguist. As it so happens. So I love language. I love the meaning of words. I like their etymology. I speak 3 languages fluently. I like to dance in the world of language. I would just study languages the rest of my life if I could. Now, I digress. But my point is, this term that I'm going to give you and how I'm going to define the human heart is technical. It's not declarative. So it's not like Robert Ohado decided to define the human heart, and this is the definition. No, it's not. It's the one I'm going to use for our alchemy together. You're free to have your own, but I'm going to ask you to just come into the laboratory, the alembic with me here, and let's get to this alchemy through my definitions. The human heart to me is the part of us that is human, and also therefore is very psychological. It's the part of our emotional core base and emotional sense of self. And therefore, if I ever were to say human heart, it goes a little bit bigger than just this area I keep touching, because if we're in human psychology, which we are in the human heart, we're also in your mind, we're in your shadow, we're in your unconscious, we're in your subconscious, we're in all of the different forces of the human psyche that make up what the human psyche is as an energy system. It has certain principles to it, parts of it that I just named, and there's maybe a few more, but for now we'll keep it tight. And the human heart branches into all of these and is connected to all of these. It's connected to your psychology, your human psychology. It's connected to how you as a human being would experience trauma, how you as a human being would have an emotional dynamic with something happening in your life. And the human heart is really the base of your emotional system as a human being. So let's go into some spectrums here of human emotion. The human heart is connected to grief. When we lose something or someone dies, it's very human to grieve. It's a normal, natural response that is part of the human heart. The human heart is also connected to anger and to rage. Normal responses to having boundaries violated or feeling oppressed by an oppressor and needing to stage a rebellion. You're going to need some anger. You're going to need some fire. You need some rage maybe to move out of something where a power dynamic is harming you, or someone's committed an act of violence against you or violated you. So it's very human. This is all great, normal territory. By great, I just mean, hey, this gets to be here. We're human. This is part of being human. And it's also part of the human heart. Then we can go into some other darker emotions like jealousy and envy. I consider that also to be part of the human heart. Sadness, happiness, in the ways that we would define that in human terms most of the time. There's also in the human heart this need to protect, maybe to fight for something and protect it. Like, the mama bear instinct to me is part of the human heart. The inner child in you that we all have is part of your human heart. And the human heart is the part of us that engages in the imperfect journey of human loving. It's the part of us that imperfectly loves people. It's a beautiful us. Gets me emotional, speaking of which, part of us, we're not perfect. As human beings, we experience a whole spectrum of emotion. And the human heart's, for me, technically, intuitively at the center of all of that. It's like the center of the wheel. This is also where you might think in terms of how you manage your vulnerability as a human being. It takes time for me to connect or really trust or love someone. That would be a statement the human heart might make, or a pattern, an archetype that is part of the human heart, in terms of you. Now, the thing that I want to begin to go toward here is that the human heart is also the vulnerable part of us that gets broken. Our hearts get broken, wounded. We get wounded as human beings. Our hearts get wounded, sometimes even shattered. And this is part of the human journey as well. And I frame this in a way where I technically see this connected to the human heart. And I think all of us, whether it's been a victimizing experience, a betrayal, or some sort of loss that didn't seem fair, maybe we knew someone that was murdered, or, when you look at what's happening to, let's say, animals being dumped at shelters that are euthanized, or people that abuse animals or their children. I mean, there's a lot that can come in here and start to activate parts of your human heart and generate a certain emotional response. And there is nothing right or wrong about any of that. In fact, that's part of being human. So I'm going to go into this thread here because it's our doorway to head toward the cosmic heart. And that is, it is our human heart that does indeed register our victim experiences. So when we feel victimized and our response is eye for an eye, that's a human heart-based response. Versus, let's say, something Christ offered, which was turn the other cheek and forgive. And I'm going to start offering a little contrast because that would possibly be an instruction from the cosmic heart. But hang with me because there's no formula when it comes to the cosmic heart. So hang with me. That said, moreover, the human heart's connected to your survival. I mean, if we're trying to make sure we don't get victimized, make sure we protect our vulnerability, make sure that we, are very cautious with what we say to people and who we connect to, who we attach to, who we love. Well, you're in human heart territory. And what I would offer within context to the human heart, and this is not right, wrong, good, or bad, it's just technical, is that when we bring up the words, really, first I'll go with the word compassion. Compassion, having compassion, which can mean a few things. In some instances, in a more Christian sense, it means to suffer with. So, for example, to suffer with Christ or suffer for Christ. But I'm more interested in the etymology of the word encompass when I say compassion, to encompass something. And within the human heart, here's a question I'd like you to explore. What can you and can't you encompass? And I don't mean just encompass to me is more technically, this is part of the human journey. I don't like it, but it's already here. So I can either accept it and work with it as an alchemist, or I can go victim and say, it shouldn't be here. Well, it already is. Can you be with it? Is the question. And here's the deal. There's things we cannot be with. There's things I can't be with about, myself, let alone things happening in the world. I can't be with, and that's just fine. I'm more a fan of being technically honest, because if we're technically honest with what our system really does and what it can and can't do, then we still have conscious choice in terms of maybe someday you want to expand your compassion to include more. Well, now you still have choice to do that. You're not trying to act like you're a good person that's accepting of something you're absolutely not accepting of. Because when we do that, things just go right to the shadow. And then we're capable of dark things, real dark stuff out of there, possibly. Now, I hope I'm kind of landing you in the nature of the human heart. It's a beautiful part of us. It beats the blood and love of your human life. It should be loved. I mean, it's an amazing, and it's, yes, deeply connected to our human survival, but it does, yes, also have major karmic and spiritual vulnerabilities, big time. So when the human heart is operating, let's say, in an optimal and balanced way, it's also going to show up in how you relate to people. You're going to relate to people in an optimal and balanced way. You're going to find yourself capable of, just being more friendly, more loving, more open. And you're going to, said another way, just going to be able to connect with people easier. You are more balanced and loving in your relationships when your human heart is kind of like, I'm beaten, I'm grooving, I'm moving with life, right? But when our human heart encounters a trauma or a victimizing experience, oftentimes, depending on where we are in our psychological maturity, if we're a child, it's going to be different versus adult. But overall, the human heart is going to, when it's feeling violated, broken, shattered, injured, or wounded, it's going to seek human options to redress what's happened, whether that's a violation, or whether it's a betrayal, or whether that's something as dark as, losing someone to war or murder. The human heart is going to go toward human options. And most of what, coming back to the victim archetype within the human heart, and rather even more, I think more accurately said, the shadow victim archetype, it's eye for an eye. You did this to me, so you need to pay. I'm not making any judgments on this. I am just presenting technical territory. And it's true because you live it. And you see it lived is in our fellow human beings. This is the nature of the human heart. So, it can be codependent, it can be clingy, and I mean, I could keep going on and on about, and it could be thoughtful, and it could be considerate, and yes, compassionate within a certain limit. Yeah. So we're going here, and remember, this is all about this eclipse moment. What's the shift? What's the interruption of the patterns? And then the new thing trying to happen through that interruption. Well, the new thing I'm going to offer here is it's about getting from human to cosmic heart. And moreover, really getting a connection between the human and cosmic heart established. I don't know of any human being that fully lives from a cosmic heart. We would classify that as sainthood, I think, in other religious traditions, but at the same time, I know of people, and I consider myself someone who actively cultivates this, that live in a way where they try and are able to activate a certain connection with this thing called the cosmic heart, which we're headed toward next. So something I want you to just hear, and then we're going to come revisit it when we get to the cosmic heart. But just hear this and see what feels true, how it makes you feel when I say this. There are some things, in fact, many things in life that happen to us as human beings, and that we see happen to other human beings, that our human hearts cannot manage, handle, metabolize, understand, or perhaps forgive. Does that feel true? Because I know for me, that feels very true. There are some things the human heart cannot take on. It's too limited. It's too based in human psychology and the natural reactivity of some parts of our human psyche. And I think there's some things the human heart just can't compute. Now, just hold that thread. Notice what you feel around that. And what I want to then offer is, I believe that to be absolutely 100% true. I've seen it in my experience as an intuitive in readings with people and in my own self, for God's sake. And what I'll offer for now as our first step toward the cosmic is what the human heart cannot handle, only the cosmic can. And part of the problem or challenge or dysfunction we experience in relationship to life, to others, to ourselves, is that we try to make the human heart take on something it can't. So can your human heart take on, I'm going to go dark here, because I've got to teach you this. We've got to get into the raw and the real. Can your human heart handle child abuse? Witnessing that happen, or having had it happen to you? Can your human heart handle a genocide? Can your human heart handle toxic political tribalism? Can your human heart handle pedophiles, incest? And as a teacher, I've said this in a different way in classes before, for people to locate their circumference of compassion, which is what you can include, not but just work with it and let it be part of your experience and work with it as an alchemist. I always watch people bristle when I get into some of those things, and I'm not judging that at all. Trust me, there's things that fall outside of what my own human heart can and can't be with. The journey I think in part for now is just be honest about that. Let's not go to our heads, as we see a lot of right now, and try to get into debates about right, wrong, vengeance and retribution as right, wrong, or whatever it is. We will not stop these karmic wheels from spinning with our mind. You won't. Your mind's going to go to default to what the human heart has to offer. And that's just a technical truth to me. I'm not making it wrong. It's part of being human. But here's the thing. There's karma for that. There's karma for defaulting to human options as the only options in handling war or transgressions or things that happen to us or to other people. So we don't get to other more perhaps healing or soulful options until we start to go, wait a minute, what else could we do here to actually heal a 200-year conflict? A betrayal in a marriage. So let's go to a betrayal in a marriage. So someone cheats on you. And this might be controversial, but I really know this to be true. All affairs are co-created. And as soon as I say that, the human heart in us is going to go, what did you say, Robert? Oh, hell no. They cheated on me. And I'll go, yeah, but let's now talk about how you've been cheating on yourself. Let's now talk about how you have been betraying yourself. You haven't been visible in this marriage. You haven't been standing up for what your needs are. You haven't owned your value. You've played a certain role that drains you out. That, by the way, has no boundaries. And then, okay, your spouse goes and acts out what you do all the time. You're in a shadow match here. This is a shadow magnetic. And that doesn't mean that we're blaming the victim. It means we're saying, hey, we co-create, right? We're going to say we co-create reality. Let's get to the co. And this is where we're going to all bristle with our human hearts like, oh, and I understand that 100%. I really do. But does the bristle, does the pivot to the victim, does the pivot to the righteous entitlement heal anything? Does going to divorce court and, as they say, taking your spouse to the cleaners heal you? No, I've never seen it heal anybody. It might give you an ego boost and pump up of some cash. Okay, but it's not going to heal the pattern that was in the marriage, the pattern in you that was in the marriage. And I'm not saying someone who's a cheater or someone who's a violator or an aggressor is not responsible for what they do. Absolutely they are. Both and. Chiron. How do we get to new options? We got to see both. Then we can claim our power to change and generate different magnetics and connections and intimacy with people. If we own that, that's the payoff. I don't have to repeat and then marry someone just like you again, who's playing out some wounded thing for me. I can actually shift, heal, and then re-relate to myself, which will change my relationship to the next person I date or the world. So when it comes to certain things that we're going to experience in life, especially the harsh, more victimizing types of things, betrayal, and some of the darkest of dark, we are always going to be challenged with a question. Will you only reference the same options that have been used time and time again by you, by your society, by your culture, by your religion, whichever it is, as the only way forward from here? You can do that, but something new comes from something new, says a new moon solar eclipse. Said another way, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And the wheels, whether it's a wheel of war or a wheel of divorce or a wheel of betrayal, or they keep spinning. It's technical. And I truly sense spiritually, these are the lessons we were born to learn from and evolve through. And what we tend to do is, instead of getting to the actual core lesson that the cosmic heart can hold and reveal for you, we stay at the human heart level and resent the teachers and feel entitled and empowered to do so. And we can do that. There's karma for that, and it'll be repeat, not evolve. So now, what I want you to understand before we jump into the cosmic heart, one more point on the human, it's very important, is that the human heart, and this is the nature of human psychology and things like trauma that occur, the human heart is what anchors you into a human timeline of life. And I call this the horizontal plane of who you are. How I see us is as two axes coming together. So there's the horizontal axis in you, and that's the horizontal earth life you live, the Saturn arena of your life. And then there's the vertical axis, which is connected to it. You know, you're in a body, you're born, but also it's where we access different dimensional power, different options of choice, response, that the cosmic heart can generate. It's also where we can pray or send what our human heart cannot handle, send it up like an elevator. You got to go to the light, because I don't know what to do with this. I know how to be with this. I'm going to have to, I call it soul prayer. Soul prayer you up. And I'm going to frame this as, all right, you're sending it to the cosmic heart. You're sending it to your angels. You're sending it to the light. It's all, to me, true. But I want you to understand yourself now, if it serves you, to understand yourself as this axis. It's an axis of co-creation. I'm going to show you, this actually is from my Saturn series, because I taught through it. There's 12 lessons in mystical maturity that Saturn and Pisces is bringing. And I taught all 12. That's why it was 21 hours of teaching. But this is at the center of those lessons in part. And I want you to think of this now. This is actually my logo. It's been my logo for 20 years. It will never change, because it so accurately encompasses what my soul contract is here as a teacher of these axes. And in this case, I used it to outline Saturn being your outer life axis and Pisces being your inner mystical axis. But just for you to get a visual of what I'm talking about, this is not exactly the teaching I'm going into right here that I'm offering you right now. But it does give you a bit of a reference point as to what I'm talking about as we journey up into the cosmic heart. So, all right, that's the human heart. I want you to spend some time getting to know your human heart. And here's what I would offer as the best medicine. Don't judge it. Don't make it wrong. Get curious. What are your go-tos in the human heart arena when you have been violated, or there's a violation going on, or someone insults you? Or what are your go-tos? And more importantly, really to start with, what do you feel? Can you be with what you feel? Can everything that you feel be okay? We are a very mentalized culture. That's why I said feelings first, meaning later. We want the meaning now to get out of the feeling. We want to mentalize emotions. It's our culturally programmed default. And instead of being with the shatteredness and the broken heart and everything, we would rather mentalize it up and then plot revenge or plot the next strategy instead of being with the heartbreak. You know, when we're wounded or we wound somebody, what's happening is someone else's holism is being violated, or ours. And that's a heartbreak. There's just no other way to talk about it other than that's painful. That's very sad. And it's heartbreaking. So can we be with the raw aspects and the darker emotional side of life? And can we just be okay with, you know what I feel right now? I feel like, yeah, everyone who committed this act should die. That's what I feel. Or, yeah, I do want to take my spouse to the cleaners. Or you know what? I'm gonna, okay, you wanna shadow dance? Here we go. I'm gonna come at you and I'm gonna bring my best breakdance moves. Can we just be with that without needing to use that as the guide of our next choice or our next action? Can we just be with that? And if we could, once again, I'm offering questions. What would heal in our lives? What would heal in the world? What healing options would then avail themselves to us that are past eye for an eye? Well, you'll never know until you spend some time just holding a space where all of your emotions get to be okay. So I'm inviting you in this to let all of your emotions about everything that's happening in the world, and most notably things like what's happening in Israel and Gaza, whatever you feel is okay. Absolutely. You don't have to like it. You don't have to mentalize it. Just be with it. Can you just be with it? And then see what happens. What might just happen is that you might find yourself connecting to a different grace inside of you that I'm going to call the cosmic heart. So what's the cosmic heart? One thing I want to point out, first of all, regarding what it's not your mind. And I also want to offer, I would suspect that you in your life at this time have felt this force in you before. I want you to think about, maybe it was a really rough relationship, or it was a really rough, violating experience from childhood, or it was something you had to forgive. And what was it that set you free? And you knew you were really free. There's mental forgiveness, which I think is bullshit. It's where we say we forgive people, but we have yet to process through our human heart all the raw emotion of the violation and everything that's happened to us. We haven't forgiven a thing. Mental forgiveness has got nothing to it. I have a video on my YouTube channel called Mystical Forgiveness if you want to go check out what mystical forgiveness is about. But for now, I'll offer this. It's about being with everything the human heart feels about things. And I would offer this, technically. I have not seen people often get to the cosmic heart without feeling what the human heart needs to feel first. We cannot bypass. We can say, I don't know how to be with Israeli children being slaughtered. I don't know how to be with that. I don't know how to be with that. And I also don't know how to be with Palestinian children dying in bombings. I don't know how to be with that either. I just don't, how my human heart can't do this. And you're right, it can't. So don't make it. And you can then light a candle and go, hey, I got to send this to Grace because the cosmic heart's got to take this one on. I'm gonna have to let it go and just bit by bit move through and wait for instruction and light to come from the cosmic heart on what the next most holistic and healing choices are for me. And you can take this anywhere in your life. But we really, as a culture, do not want to be with what we feel. It's much easier to go on rants and then get into endless throwing of barbs on social media and not just sit in what we feel and go, what do I actually feel about this? And then maybe you touch in and it's like, I feel rage. Okay, can you hang there? Can you just hang there for a minute? Be with it. Let's be with the rage for a while. Let's see if it shifts. What comes up? Where does that guide you? And it's a practice, to be sure. But the cosmic heart, what it really is, I could use the word soul. That's accurate. It's your soul. I could use the word, it's your soul esteem. It's the part of you that knows you're enough no matter what. Also true. It's the part of you that's capable of unconditional love. And I think you got to really get into the word unconditional, meaning no condition whatsoever, no matter what. Jesus Christ level of love. I love you even though you are putting a spike through my wrist and I'm going to die. And you know what? I'm going to forgive you. Mystical forgiveness. I'm not doing it with my head. I am going to forgive you. You don't know what you're doing. And I've noticed, and it's just something to be aware of, whenever triggering events, whether it's a 9/11 or Russia, Ukraine, or whatever it is, and there will be many more, This is the era we're in, or in Iraq. People that claim their path is of Christ or of compassion are unable to animate compassion or forgiveness during those times. Richard Gere, after 9/11, said, hey, if we don't learn how to have compassion for those that transgress us and start to see with different eyes, this is just going to keep repeating. And he was ostracized for that. And I think somewhere in us, we all kind of know he was telling some kind of truth there. Eye for an eye makes the world go blind, right? We've heard this. So, and yet both and. I'm a both and kind of guy. Does that mean we should not have some way to handle a terrorist that might include killing them? Personally, my personal sense is yes, we should. But we have to come from a framing of the love rebel in us. And that's not in everybody's capacity, and I honor that. But if we don't come from that, then we get blinded. And then we may start killing innocent people as collateral damage. So the cosmic heart, unconditional love, is the Christos consciousness. It feels all of life also unconditionally. It can be with every dark atrocity of the world. It can be with the most joyous of human emotions and human acts of selflessness and true rescue. So as I say these things, have you felt this in your field? Have you had a moment where the cosmic heart came online and shot grace into your human heart and this connection started to happen and it got you vertical, pulled you out of the horizontal levels of your human heart and your human orientation and put you into this different zone of perception and empowerment where you really, truly evolved. You got options of evolution versus repeat, and you didn't feel the need to go after somebody or do something you would usually do in a certain circumstance where there was some sort of betrayal or harsh thing that happened. I think all of us have had, near as I can tell, most people have had that experience. I know I've had it many times. And that's what I'm talking about. When you get that part of you activated, that can now move with grace. And I don't mean to say when we move with grace, anything goes. Not at all. In fact, the energy of Eris in astrology is about being able to say, hey, I am a disruptor of the usual formulas. And I go with what's intuitively true. So next level of cosmic heart, it's intuitive. What does intuitive mean? The human heart's formulaic. It is eye for an eye, just as a symbolic way to say that. And that's that. The cosmic heart's intuitive. It's in some situations, maybe eye for an eye is the medicine. In some situations, it's not. In some situations, it's about understanding the complexities of history and a conflict that's got 200 years of history behind it to really understand the best medicine we need here right now. So the cosmic heart doesn't move on formula. When we get into paradigms of right and wrong, we can get formulaic. We can become almost fundamentalist there. And when we're fundamentalist, it's black or white, not intuitive, but black or white. We're going to shut down our human heart in as much as disconnect from the cosmic one. And now we have dark aspects of our nature running choice that, as history shows us, keep the wheel spinning, the karmic wheel spinning. So you have to feel through with your human heart what you can in order to access the cosmic one. And there are many things the human heart is not equipped to handle or feel through. And that's where you get down to the difference. I can't feel through that. It's just too much. That is a technical truth. And when you feel that, that's when you have to turn it over to a greater heart. If you want to call this the heart of Christ, the heart of God, Goddess, the divine, I don't really care. I say cosmic because it just is more inclusive. of all the gods and goddesses and everyone else's references, but your human heart is going to be limited this way. And that's not to be perfectionist or anything. It's just what's true. And where I would have you kind of do some questioning and exploration is look at the world right now. And if you immediately do conjure what's happening in Israel and Gaza, okay, can you be with that? Can you be with all the emotions that come up for you around that? Without a need to go tell everyone else how they should feel, by the way. But just be with how you feel. What I'll offer as your guide is that if you can be with that, you will get guided to where you have a soul contract or you have a destiny to move with some kind of grace in these sorts of situations that are just too overwhelming for us as humans to handle emotionally. There are things we're seeing on the news. I actually make it a point to honor this life in this world, to watch and be informed of what's happening, even though it's really hard and horrific to see, because that's how I know I'm going to get my cosmic card in the mix. And I resist people telling me how I should feel or what is the truth or what's right, who's on the right side, who's on the wrong side. I move with a certain compass that comes from the cosmic heart of me as to, hey, I don't actually have the answers. I don't know what the medicine is here. Or that's going to cause repeat. That action right there is going to cause repeat. So I'm just suggesting and offering for you to do the same. And I think this is the opportunity at this crossroads of this new moon solar eclipse in Libra. And this is for all relationships in every arena of your life, whether you're finally at another repeat with a business partner and you're trying to be as cosmic and vertical as possible, and you offer invulnerability maybe to them, an olive branch to have a conversation, and they shoot you down because they go back to their old ways of relating to you. And so, yeah, what do you do when you choose, let's say, the higher ground, of the cosmic heart, and someone else doesn't? How do you roll with that? And what you might learn is, well, I did that with the expectation that they would also come with me up into the cosmic heart, and they didn't. And now I'm pissed, or I'm hurt, or whatever it is. And then that shows you, wow, I was conditional. I was being conditional. It wasn't a bad, try to cosmic this up with some compassion and love, or do you kind of regroup and, okay, they don't want to come with me on and be up at this altitude. Okay, that's information for me. And it also now gives me a lot of choices to consider, because I'm not coming down to, the shadow dancing and the manipulations and the power plays and the power grabs. I was vulnerable. They came in with a power grab. Oh, wow. Okay. And we're going to experience these things. Just because we elevate up doesn't mean someone else that's been our shadow dancing partner or someone who's triggered in their own stuff right now is going to come with us. We can't control that. And what's wonderful about the cosmic heart is it does give you a great read on your power and powerlessness balance. Where do you have power? Where don't you? Were you trying to have power where you'll never have it? And why are you doing that? You don't have power to control people. Not really. So looking at what I have been offering here, let's lean into Israel for a minute. And I'm going to guide this with questions. And this is for you to see where you are. There's no right or wrong in terms of this exercise for me. When we look at this, I think one thing to consider that is, I think in plain view, is that the history and complexities of Israel and Palestine go back at least 100 years, and they're complex. And the complexity of the history of their conflict is like a minefield, trying to understand the right side, the wrong side. And I think it's led many people at this time to feel that they can't really say anything without saying something wrong. And we're in such a culture now where, you will be the hive mind will swarm you on Twitter or on social media if you do say something wrong, quote unquote, in their eyes, or, that's not PC or not correct. Or we can't just be fucked up human beings anymore that sometimes say stupid shit or say something and then learn from it and move on. We are made wrong versus being offered a critique or a different, maybe more heartfelt way to see something from someone's heart. A heartfelt, hey, could you look at it this way? Have you thought of it this way? So it seems to me any conversations around this right now are easily flammable. And I only decided to do this eclipse because I had so many of my own students asking for it, honestly. I have a whole full plate of other things going on right now. And I was also worried that I too would be misunderstood or that misinterpreted for what it is I'm trying to really bring forward as a teaching here. But I would say if you're trying to process this, maybe come to some surrender that there's some of it you can't process. And I'm going to offer, try the Cosmic Heart out. The way that I move with that is if I have a situation like that, I have to let it go. I have to surrender through soul prayer to a greater grace field than my own, because I don't have the grace to pull it off. And that, I don't make myself wrong. I would never make someone else wrong for that. I'm a technician. I understand human systems, human psychology, how we work as systems technically. And looking at technical things is just karmic, and there's no right or wrong. It's just a karmic system. If it's useful for you, try to embrace seeing yourself that way. Look, I'm just a limited being with a human heart that has its limits and a limited psychology. And there's just only so much I can even take on. I think that's an act of wisdom to own that. And I think it's empowering to go, look, we could get into right or wrong and this and that and next move and why it's the right one, but I don't really know. But I know if I just take a minute and be with my feelings and feel it through, I will know. And it'll be an intuitive, emotional knowing that comes from not my mind, but my soul. So the truth is this, because what that then becomes, if you go to the mind, is it becomes talking points and shaming one side over the other. And I don't find that healing or useful, and I'm not saying we shouldn't advocate and stand up for our truth. Yes, I believe in that as well, both and. But there's speaking from truth and speaking from reaction, and from a reaction that maybe is going to now point you in a dark direction. So, for example, when looking at this conflict with Israel and Hamas, when does, in their response to the murdered or the people that have been slain, when does a country or a people in their response become the same as the murderer? At what point does something shift to where now you've become, in your actions and in your heart, what the other side was in their acts against you? And that's a question. I'm not making a statement. That's a question. When is that? When would you say when do you see that happening? When is that true for you? And once again, getting to the Cosmic Heart, I think, is best served in living in questions, because it opens up past knowing with the mind's limits to knowing with a Cosmic Heart. And the truth is, really, we are all, no matter what situation or relationship we're in, we're all spiritually equipped to know what's true and where we are called to be this. And this is what I would lean into and ask the question. And is this Israel Gaza conflict, war, I would say, hey, where am I called here to be the answer to someone's prayer? I don't care from who, so long as it's a soul prayer. Who's soul praying and how can I answer that? That changes the game. Because what it does for me, as I even say that, is it makes me realize we all suffer, we all matter. We all had our soul's passport stamped to incarnate and be here, or we would not be here. what we are here to do is learn, and learn how to co-create maybe a world without war, or a society with equality, no matter what gender or race or sexual orientation or whatever it might be. We're here to learn. And learning, it's hard. And we're going to fuck up. Can that be okay? Can we just be okay with, we don't maybe know, and we might go in one way and realize that was not really useful, connecting, nourishing, graceful. So I'm going to course correct. Instead, people lock into a tribal mindset and no longer really think and or feel for themselves. And then that's when I think the darkest of who we are gets the upper hand, no matter what's happened. So as you sit at this crossroads of self and your relationships and your personal dynamics and the collective dynamics that are all around us right now, let it all, everything I'm saying, let it all just kind of move around in you. See where you find yourself. Be okay not knowing. It's okay not to know. It's okay to become more informed and feel through things. And then wait for a bit. I'll tell you, historically, when events like Israel and Gaza have happened, I've had students get mad at me for not immediately saying something. But they don't understand what it means to be intuitive in a way where you've got to consult and connect to the cosmic heart, and it takes a minute to feel the human one, know its coordinates, and then organically activate this connection and channel to the cosmic. That is something that's usually done in contemplation, feeling your feelings, sensing things through. And sometimes I got it right now, because you know what? It's intuitive. Meaning there's no formula. Sometimes it takes a while, sometimes it doesn't. I tend to be, with real mass events, someone who needs to feel the field for a while, because there's so much in the field before I can stand in what I feel to be true and give guidance from there. And moreover, rather than that, why don't you get your own? Feel your own cosmic heart. So you have no need of me to tell you how to move through this with some sort of mental strategy. Well, I'm going to tell you don't. Just feelings first, meaning later. Hang out there. Feel your feelings. What do you feel about what happened to all those people on the beach in Israel? What do you feel about the innocent civilians now in Gaza who are terrified of Hamas, so much so they can't stand up to them, and now they're going to maybe die? How do you feel about that? I mean, these are not formulaic things to some degree. We're going to all agree on certain pieces because it's just self-evident. What happened to those people on the beach was horrific. And I have my own feelings about that. And it's heartbreaking. It's horrible. Why are we still doing this to each other? But I also look at it and I can see the karmic wheel and the next spin and the next spin. And then I ask myself questions, and questions maybe to ask, hey, this is a chess move from Hamas. This is the first move. Is Israel just moving now right into the play? And this is what being intuitive, this is what this offers. It gives you a chance to take a step back and see holistically what is going on. We're going to have our human, right on the ground level, reactions and feelings. Yes, and they get to be okay no matter what they are. But where does the healing come from? Where does the medicine come from? And I can't say what that would be for you necessarily. But I can say, when it comes to humanity, war seems to just generate a next generation of terrorists and people that hate each other. And doesn't it? So, and yet, how do we contain terrorism and handle that? What are your answers? What are yours? And moreover, in all of this, how do you touch your soul and ask, how can I be the answer to someone's prayer here? Maybe I need to go comfort a Jewish friend or a Palestinian friend, or maybe I need to go and donate Or maybe I need to go there, as some doctors do, and just be there to bring grace and healing through my skill sets. Many have gone to Ukraine. I have a friend who's a doctor that did that. You know, I'm more interested in that kind of call. And what I'm after here, I'm going to close this down. At this crossroads, how can we be with in a new way? This is a new moon solar eclipse. How can we be with our relationships in a new way? So I hope, you know, you'll explore what it means to be with a cosmic heart, a human heart, all these various things I've offered. Because in the end, you know, I always feel as an intuitive teacher and guide, I'm here not to tell you what to think, what to believe necessarily, or what's true or false. But I do feel I am here to help you decide, discern, and intuit that for yourself. And sometimes you got to ping around and trigger and around, and that's very true. You got to trigger around and be with things in raw, real, uncomfortable ways to get to what is your sense of cosmic heart truth. But I will offer, technically speaking, this is the technician talking, that the truth that I see people think is truth is more a polarized tribal mindset versus truth. It's not intuitive. It's formulaic. It's based in either or. And this is the formula we will continue to apply to handle every single situation like this, without any sense of complexity or nuance or understanding of what keeps things like the wheel of war spinning, or the wheel of betrayal, or the wheel of heartbreak, and the wheel of unrequited loving, and the wheel of, you know, overgiving and being surrounded by narcissists and vampires. The wheel, what keeps these things spinning? Well, you won't find that inside of your mind's formulas, because the mind is a product of the pattern in play. So if you're a fundamentalist, you have a fundamentalist mind. That archetype generates the mental set. We think mental sets generate reality. It's the archetype that generates the mental set, and then that's how we see reality. That's the technical layout from what I've seen in all of my work. So how can we access different perception, different perspectives? We do it through questions. We get curious. We become willing to be with shit we don't want to be with. And that becomes the way our spiritual practice hits the fucking streets. Instead of saying choose love over fear, how about we actually feel what the human heart's going through and get real about that, and let the next organic grace connect. And then we're not making a choice at all. It's the organic nature of our soul that kicks in, instead of these paradigms, which are just mental gymnastics and slogans most of the time that don't get traction in evolution. And so it's times like this where we will see just how compassionate we really are and aren't. And you're still enough, and you're still lovable, and you still matter and get to be here with your limited human heart compassion. It's okay. But there's karma for that. Do you want to change that? Okay, cool. Let's love yourself into the cosmic heart. You can shame yourself into it. That will not work at all. Quite the opposite. Be with everything now. Love you. Love it all. Love what you don't have to like it. Loving something, accepting it, doesn't mean you like it. No. It means I can be with it. And if I can't be with it, I got a soul prayer to be with it, because I don't have it in me. I got that limit too. I cannot be with that. You can never really truly lie yourself out of your system and what it really does. You just won't. You're going to be much better served being in the real raw deal and knowing it's totally okay to do that. And you organically shift through what grace does. Grace summons the soul. So it's a lot to be with right now. And we can be with it. And where we can't be with it, we can bring in greater power to be with it. And I'm telling you, that shit works. It really does. Trust me. I don't say this as someone who hasn't had a few traumas in my life from childhood on. I say it as someone who's been beat down here and there. So we're all in good company. We're all in the company of each other's human hearts, and we got a cosmic one. It's around us, just waiting to get a say in our system. And the best way to do that is just be with the human first. Feelings first, meaning later. And back to my original point about my students, they used to get mad at me for not giving them the meaning right away that could give them the hall pass or the bypass out of feeling raw, dark feelings. So much love for you, and truly take some time when this eclipse happens. Just to me, the energy of an eclipse lasts for a few days. This will probably be an energy in the field for quite some time into next week. This is an opportunity to have your normal system interrupt around the way you relate and love and connect and see things like, yes, justice, fairness, reciprocity, care, love, compassion, how you relate through all the parts of you that do your relating. Get to know them, get curious about them at this eclipse. Which ones are really being triggered up and activated to be present here? Let's love them. Let's hug those dragons. And let's just be with what's true. And then see where the shift comes, where we're guided, where the grace comes, where we are called, indeed, to be the answer to someone's prayer. So much love for you. I hope this was helpful. I would love to hear your comments beneath the video. One caveat, I'm not going to do shadow dancing with people. So if you want to write things that are, I don't know why you would, but nasty, just don't. Life's too short. This isn't for you. This message wasn't for you. Move on, really. And I say that with love, but I'd love to hear how this affected you, what came up for you, and how the eclipse goes. So as well, if you feel like there's someone else that would be very greatly benefited by this information, this message, this teaching, share this around. And of course, hit that like button and check out my Cosmic Guidance package, where I go into a lot of depth around some of these themes. This was a big one that was in there. But there were 12 lessons total that I think will really help you through this Saturn cycle over the next 2.5 years. So I will see you in the next social live. I do plan on being live next week. I don't know what I'm talking about yet, but you'll be the first to know. In the meantime, I think we can all agree, perhaps, I hope, that both Gaza and Israel and even, dare I say, Hamas need prayers. This world needs prayers. It needs light. It needs love. And all this, does come from a lack of love. So let's be the love. Let's bring the love in the ways we're really called, and the ways that we feel we actually can. Sometimes we cannot do that, and I get it. All right. Take care of yourself, and namaste.